You're listening to the Touchdown Under podcast with Jack, Emilian, Anthony, and Ruth. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Touchdown Under podcast. This is episode 7. I'm Jack, your host, and as always, I'm joined by Emilian.
Hey, how's it going?
Anthony.
Good to be here.
And Ruth.
Happy to be back.
On today's episode, we'll be going through our All-AFC East and All-AFC North division teams. But before that, we'll jump straight into our news segment, and making news this week in the NFL was the Patriots, who signed Cam Newton to a 1-year contract worth up to $7.5 million in incentives. The team guarantees him just $550,000 on a $1.05 million base salary. Newton has a chance to receive $700,000 in per-game roster bonuses and another $5.75 million in incentives. What kind of impact do we think Newton will have on the Patriots, lads?
I mean, however Newton plays this season, this contract is just incredible. I don't know how they made him sign for so little money, because he's getting paid less by some of the worst quarterbacks. Like, he's getting paid less than Nathan Peterman. And the fact that he's going to be a starter, most likely, I don't think he's going to compete for the starting role. I think it's very good for the Patriots. I mean, they can't do much worse, honestly. They can't do much better given what they already have.
Yeah, I think in terms of skill, like putting the actual contract to the side, I think the ability for Newton to scramble, like he did in Carolina, I think that'll be a big advantage for New England. They haven't had a quarterback, obviously, in Brady that could do that for a long time, so he'll definitely be beneficial for that team.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that later about Newton's unique rushing ability. Yeah, I think this is a great contract, especially with all those incentives. And yeah, I'm not sure about the way Belichick's talking. It's like possibly he might not even be a confirmed starter, but they thought he wouldn't even sign with the Patriots, so I guess we'll see.
You made a good point, Emilian. The contract that Newton signed is incredibly team-friendly, and if you think about it, most backups in this league are paid more or guaranteed more money than what Newton has been guaranteed for this season. So it actually makes me wonder if Newton will actually even start, because this is really just third string money, if anything, and maybe they do actually believe in Jarrett Stidham more than they do in Newton, but we'll just have to wait and see. Chris Jones refuses to play the 2020 season if a deal isn't agreed to by the July 15 deadline for franchise-tagged players. Jones is set to make $16.1 million on the franchise tag in 2020. The Chiefs are also looking to extend Patrick Mahomes soon. What does this mean for the Chiefs, boys?
I don't think they can sign him to a big deal. I mean, they're going to pay Mahomes. They're going to make Mahomes the highest paid quarterback in the league, without doubt, right? You don't let go of this guy. And then you've also got a bunch of young players coming up. I mean, Tyreek Hill's going to have to be extended as well. I think there's too much talent on this Chiefs roster to have two mega deals with Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones. I think Chris Jones tries to play somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with you, Million. I don't think it's worth him sitting out the 2020 season just for a contract. With obviously the Chiefs are really good, but it's probably just worth him not holding out and going to another team and taking his skills somewhere else.
Yeah, especially since they already have Frank Clark on that kind of 15 plus per year kind of deal. I feel like Chris Jones definitely should play the season and then maybe look to go somewhere else, especially since Mahomes will probably be being paid over $200 million in his deal.
Yeah, well, put simply, there's no way that the Chiefs are going to be paying Chris Jones over Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes will get an incredible deal, and I think it'll leave Jones on the out. I think he will eventually go and play somewhere else. Finally, the preseason has officially been shortened to 2 games. The first and last games will be scrapped, and people are still questioning whether the preseason will go ahead at all at this point in time. Boys, do we think the regular season gets postponed or cancelled?
I think it's postponed. I think that right now the situation just is not at a state where it needs to be to have the season go ahead on normal schedule. I think they'll postpone it for a few months, and I'm honestly not sure if it'll be played at all. I think there is a possibility that we wait until next year for the 2021 season.
Yeah, I don't think they'll cancel it for sure. It'll be postponed, if anything, because I just don't think you can go straight into the season coming off an extended break, assuming that the whole season is scheduled a few months later than it should actually be starting. So I think at this moment that The fact that it's like only 2 games instead of 4, I think that's a best case scenario, and it'll definitely go ahead those 2 games.
Yeah, it's also interesting to note the US is still getting over 50,000 coronavirus cases a day. So it's a possibility that this preseason probably won't go ahead at all, but I guess time will tell.
I think the regular season does not get postponed or cancelled. I think they'll play. I hope they play in front of no crowds, but I think they will let some people in because the NFL is so money driven, and I think they will make sure that fans do get in so that there's that stream of revenue coming through. I don't think it'll get postponed or cancelled.
Yeah, they were talking earlier today about a coronavirus liability form, so the fans could enter the stadium if they sign this form. I think that will be the best case scenario for the NFL to get some fans into the venues.
Obviously, yeah, it does come with quite a risk though. Now, with that out of the way, we can get into our All-AFC East and All-AFC North division teams. And we will start with our All-AFC East team. And at quarterback, we have Cam Newton, who is, of course, now with the New England Patriots. Personally, I don't really buy into the idea that Newton doesn't fit in New England. People forget that, in addition to being, that real threat on the ground, he's also a, more than capable pocket passer. All this being said, I don't necessarily believe Newton is actually currently better than Sam Darnold. Despite only having played 2 seasons in the league, Darnold already has a higher career completion percentage than Newton, and he's also considerably younger than Newton, and doesn't come with the injury concerns that Cam does.
I think that, from what I've seen on social media, I think a lot of people are overhyping this Cam Newton signing. Patriots haven't had a quarterback like him for, they've had Brady for the last 20 years pretty much.
Yeah.
And I don't think he fits the Patriots system as it is now. I'm sure that Belichick is definitely going to adjust the offense to suit Newton's style more. And as I said, Jack, he is a capable pocket passer, but he's not at Tom Brady level. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I'm interested to see who his favourite target is, whether it be Edelman or Sanu, or someone else maybe. I do think he's the best quarterback in this division. I believe Josh Allen is the second best. I'm pretty sure Cam Newton's going to return to his 2018 form. He threw for 3,395 yards and 24 touchdowns in that season. And he also ran for almost 500 yards. So it'll be interesting to see how Cam Newton plays here in New England. Very excited to see it.
Yeah, I don't see how, especially with Bill Belichick being the coach, obviously, how he can't make Cam Newton fit into that system. Or how, I don't see the possibility of it not working out in New England. Well, Jack, you mentioned before that his contract is relatively cheap compared to other starters and backups. So you suggested that he might not get the starting job, but that being said, I still think there's a lot of potential for him to mesh into that system, especially that he has that threat on the ground to run the ball in given situations. I think that's very valuable and something New England hasn't had for quite a while, but I think it's something that he could add to the team that will make him benefit.
Yeah, we all know that Cam Newton's great at zone reads. His new offensive coordinator, Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, he used to be the head coach for Tim Tebow at Denver back in the day. He has familiarity with dual threat quarterbacks, and I think him and Belichick will definitely be able to mold Newton into their playing style. I don't think this is a bad signing as some people think it is, and it's really not for a load of money either, so I think this is a good deal.
In my opinion, there's no way that the Patriots would sign someone like a Newton if they didn't have a plan in place for him. They already have Stidham and Hoyer there. If they didn't want anyone else, then they would have gone with those two, but they got Newton, so I think there is a plan in place and they've signed to a really team-friendly deal. I think this is really quite a good deal for the Patriots. Obviously, he's a real threat on the ground, and that's really something that Brady, in his last few seasons at the Patriots, was not able, that was not a part of his game. So there's a real opportunity to kind of change the way that the Patriots play with Newton. So, I feel like this is a decent signing. But
I do want to mention that the Patriots haven't really added much to their offense at all. I mean, they've still got the same players as last season. They've got Michelle on the ground as well as James White. They've got Julian Edelman, Mohamed Sanu, same from last season. So I do believe the Patriots are a playoff team. But for me, the things that get them to the playoffs is that defense and Bill Belichick. For me, it's not really Cam Newton that gets them there. I think he'll help, but he's not really a big factor in this team's success, in my opinion.
That's a fair point.
I think if the quarterback play, though, is below average, I'm not sure that I see them going to the playoffs, even with that defense in New England. On to our running backs, and we have at running back 1, Le'Veon Bell from the Jets, and Matt Breida from the Dolphins. Bell, is the obvious choice here. He needed a little bit of time to adjust in New York after, having that year out of the league the year before, and I think he got better as the season went on, and I'm expecting an improvement in 2020.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell, easy choice here. I mean, in Pittsburgh, he was one of the best running backs in the league, and a lot of people think he benefited from a great offensive line, which is true. He did benefit from it, and we saw that on the Jets there. He didn't play well at the start of the season. He was getting used to it, as you said, Jack. But I think that his ability to wait behind the offensive line and find the gaps just makes him such an elite player, and he's easily the number one choice here.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Million. He's the only running back that I think he heavily features that aspect of his game, that waiting for that hole to develop for, instead of just running blind into through the offensive line. But I think obviously in 2014 to 2017 he had his prime in Pittsburgh. I think obviously that the offensive line in New York is probably to blame for him not having that 1,000-yard season or getting close to it. He had just under 800 yards in 2019. I think as he spends more time in New York, maybe in the 2020 season, we could expect him to pick up and get another 1,000-yard season.
The Jets are going to have 3 new offensive line starters, including their first-round pick, Mekhi Becton. They also signed 4 offensive linemen in free agency. So I think Bell will definitely average a lot more than 3.2 yards per carry in 2020.
On to our running back 2, obviously Matt Breida. I'm not sure if Breida is actually the best running back here. Devin Singletary was a real eye-catcher in his rookie season with limited snaps, and Sony Michel is often a forgotten name in New England despite his continual productivity. Singletary only started 8 games last season for Buffalo, but he still managed 775 rushing yards at 5 yards per carry and just under 1,000 scrimmage yards. Boys, that is immense productivity for any running back, let alone a rookie. And, then there's Michel, who in his 2 years in the league has never ran for less than 910 yards in a season and has scored at least 6 touchdowns in each of his 2 years in the league. I think these two guys really, compete with Breida for that running back 2 spot.
I think for here, I don't think Sony Michel should be in this conversation simply because he gets so much of the ball. Last year, he had 247 attempts. While he did have the most yards out of these 3 players in Breida, Singletary, and Michel, I think that the fact that he only ran for 3.7 yards per carry kind of counters that fact. I mean, Devin Singletary, he had 5.1 yards per carry, and Matt Breida, he had 5.1 yards per carry, but a lot less attempts. So I think Matt Breida is very deserving. He was sharing the ball with Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, so very interested to see how he plays here with Jordan Howard and the Dolphins.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of hard to judge whether or not Matt Breida is better or worse than Sony Michel, in terms of if they're deserving to take this ranking instead of Matt Breida. That's because solely obviously in San Francisco, they had a very run-heavy offense. They obviously shared the ball between Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman as well as Matt Breida when he was there. So the stat line isn't as convincing for him, but that's because they shared the ball so often, had limited snaps. I think him going to Miami, he'll probably have more. I reckon he will have more snaps. So his stat line will probably increase, but I'm not sure whether or not that proves him to be a better running back than Sony Michel. I think at the moment, probably would be a bit better running back in Miami, get more opportunities, but I'm not 100% convinced.
This is a really curious one. I mean, between these 3 backs, Breida has probably the most speed. He has the most potential, I guess, especially going to Miami. He's got the potential to start. Then you got Singletary, who's a rookie. He can pretty much take control of the snaps now that Frank Gore's gone. And then you have Sony Michel, who is probably, in my opinion, the best runner out of these running backs. But the only thing about Michel is he's not really a factor in the receiving game, which is where people like Singletary and Breida can take over him. So, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I'm not so convinced with Breida is that, he's now out of San Francisco where he had that really good offensive line and that really good offensive running game plan. And, I mean, there's a good chance, he'll be just as good in Miami, but there's also a chance that he doesn't translate or adjust as well as we think he might. And, we may see a regression. I'm not sure. I just don't know how much I believe in Brita just yet. But, obviously all three guys have their own set of unknowns.
Yeah, I do think at this point next year, if we were to make a list like this again, I definitely think Devin Singletary would take this spot.
Yeah.
Obviously, with Frank Gore gone, I think he's really going to explode. On to our wide receivers now, and we have at wide receiver 1, Stephon Diggs, who's now at Buffalo, Julian Edelman from New England, and Devontae Parker from the Dolphins at wide receiver 3. I think, boys, we've nailed all 3 wide receivers here. Diggs put up great numbers last season despite sharing targets with Adam Thielen in Minnesota, and now that he's the main man in Buffalo, I'm expecting an even better output. Edelman, despite his older age, is still producing at an almost elite level. Last season, at the age of 33, he registered 100 receptions, which is the second highest tally in his career, and 1,117 receiving yards, which was the most in a season in his career. And obviously some of that can be attributed to, Rob Gronkowski's absence, but they're still very impressive numbers nonetheless. And finally, we have Devontae Parker, who before his breakout season last year was widely considered to be a bust draft choice for the Dolphins, as he frustrated Miami fans with his lack of notable production. However, he exploded in 2019, coming away with 72 receptions, 1,202 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns on 128 targets, all of which are career highs. So I'm expecting a similar level of production once he and Tua Tagovailoa build some chemistry together.
I think it's very close here between Diggs and Edelman. I mean, Diggs is much more of, that deep route running player that you find not every snap, but you will find him every now and then. And then Edelman is much more of that, possession receiver. You look for him when you want to play it safe, and he is excellent in that role. I can't choose between the two. I mean, Diggs is in his prime right now. He's had back-to-back seasons with 1,000 receiving yards, and that is with having Adam Thielen on the other side, so that is a huge accomplishment. I'm not sure that he will replicate this with Josh Allen thrown to him, because Josh Allen is known to have a bit of suspect accuracy, but it will be good to see Diggs as number 1 receiver, and it's good for the Bills that they finally have a deep threat. Last season they didn't really pass the ball deep that much because they didn't have that receiver that could do that, so now they have that in Diggs. With Edelman, I mean, he had one of the best seasons of his career last year, and I think a big part of that is because Brady had Edelman as his only reliable target. There wasn't much help for Brady there. But it will be interesting to see how often Cam Newton or whoever the quarterback for the Patriots uses Edelman going forward. With Devontae Parker, absolutely incredible season last year. I mean, very impressive, 1,202 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. I do think, as you said, Jack, he will continue to improve as he enters his prime, and it will be great to see the chemistry develop with Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, it's really interesting between Stephon Diggs and Julian Edelman. There's a lot of moving parts that both receivers are facing. Obviously, Stephon Diggs moving to Buffalo, and Julian Edelman being forced to, adjust to a new quarterback in New England. I think I agree with the other rankings we have at the moment, with Diggs being that wide receiver 1 and Edelman being wide receiver 2, solely because I think the deep threat he'll provide for Josh Allen is probably more valuable than Julian Edelman being that, reliable target, even though Julian Edelman is still very valuable. I'm just not sure how he will mesh with a new quarterback, because he played under Tom Brady for over a decade. So he's very used to that, chemistry they had was, really was pretty much the life and soul of their offense, I think. So, overall, they had similar stat lines in 2019, but I'd probably just give Diggs the edge here just because of that deep threat. Yeah.
Yeah, Diggs averaged a really impressive 17.9 yards per reception last season. I think it was probably his most valuable season to date, even though he had a lot more catches in 2018. He was targeted a lot more in 2018, but I think he was a lot more explosive last season. Now he's paired with John Brown. As you mentioned, Anthony, I think speed is a much better, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very improved on that offense.
Yeah, especially since, with Brady, he usually goes for those short passes with Edelman. I'm not sure how Newton and Edelman will be able to build their chemistry. I don't think Edelman will replicate his 100-catch season. I think 60 to 70 is a lot more realistic, especially since we saw Cam Newton recently training with Mohamed Sanu. Maybe that could be Newton's guy going forward. Interesting how Devontae Parker finally got going after Ryan Tannehill got traded away. I found that pretty interesting, to be honest. I think there was a lot of critics found maybe this might be a one-off for Parker, but I don't see why he can't replicate his 2019 season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Riff. I think having Tua in Miami will only benefit Devontae Parker going forward. So you mentioned, obviously, Tannehill left the Dolphins, and Devontae Parker, sorry. I was going to say Freeman. Had this season, and he really broke out. Yeah, so I think drafting Tua so early and has been so anticipated to perform well can only be a good thing for him. So I expect him to continue to perform at a similar level, or I hope he does.
Definitely.
Anthony, I thought you raised a really good point there about these three receivers and the moving parts, because all three will have to adjust this season to like new personnel.
Yeah.
Obviously, Parker. I'm not so sure that the chemistry is just going to be there instantly with Tua. Like, it's going to take some time. So that's definitely an adjustment he's going to have to make. Obviously, Edelman with Newton, a very different quarterback to Brady. It's going to take some time there as well. And obviously, Diggs in Buffalo. Josh Allen is a different quarterback again to Cousins.
Yeah.
Cousins is like a more of a pocket passer, whereas Josh Allen, he can really move, but there are definitely suspicions about his accuracy, as you said, a million. On to our tight end now. We have Mike Gesicki from the Dolphins. Now, with the permanent departure of Gronkowski, Gesicki is the best remaining choice at tight end in this division, in my opinion. Having watched a bit of him last season, I like him. He has impressive mobility and speed for a guy his size, and he produced reasonably well last year in a generally lackluster Dolphins offense with Ryan Fitzpatrick at the helm.
It's a fairly weak tight end pool in the AFC East. There's no denying that. But Mike Gesicki does stand out from the rest. As I said, Jack, he did play really well in a fairly poor Dolphins offense. So he recorded over 500 receiving yards, and still very young at the age of 24. I don't see why he can't continue to improve.
Yeah, like I said, for Devontae Parker, having Tua as a new quarterback there, I think that will also help benefit Mike Gesicki here, because you said he's 24 years old. He's relatively young. He still has room for improvement. So having a good quarterback throwing to him can only be a good thing for him.
Yeah, he still managed to gather 89 targets last season with, average quarterback play. So I think he definitely has the potential to flourish with Tua Tagovailoa.
As much as Tua will improve the Dolphins eventually, I feel like we've got to pump the brakes a little bit on assuming that he's just going to come in straight away and improve everything around him.
Yeah.
It will definitely take time, and I don't know if we will see proper improvement until maybe the season after next season.
Absolutely, I agree. I think it's going to be much like a Kyler Murray situation there in Miami.
Onto our offensive line, we have Deion Dawkins from the Bills at offensive tackle, Joe Thuney from the Patriots at guard, David Andrews from the Patriots at center, Quinton Spain from the Bills at guard, and Marcus Cannon from the Patriots at tackle. Onto our defense now. At defensive end, we have Buffalo's Jerry Hughes. At defensive tackle, we have Steve McClendon from the Jets. And at the other end spot, we have Buffalo's Trent Murphy. Jerry Hughes and Trent Murphy have been integral yet vastly underrated pieces of the Bills' now elite defense. Buffalo's Ed Oliver will soon overtake McClendon as he continues to improve, in my opinion. But for right now, McClendon gets the nod at defensive tackle.
Yeah, there's no star defensive end in this division. There's not a J.J. Watt, there's not a Cameron Jordan, etc. That being said, Jerry Hughes has been very consistent in the past few years. He did peak in 2013 and 14. I don't think he'll have another double-digit sack season, but he is deserving of being on this list. He's been very reliable for the Bills, as has Trent Murphy. I mean, he's another consistent defensive end in the division. He has had a good season last year, getting 5 sacks, 36 tackles, and an interception. He's 29, so he's getting up there in age. Hopefully he can stay consistent for a few more years and help out that Bills defense. Defensive tackle, Steve McClendon. I think that Ed Oliver should be here on this list simply because he is a lot younger and he had a very promising rookie season. He was able to record 5 sacks and 43 tackles. I think he's achieved more in his rookie season than McClendon has in the last 3 years. I know they play different positions in the sense that McClendon plays at nose tackle, whereas Ed Oliver does play that traditional defensive tackle role. but I do think Ed Oliver should get the nod here.
I think at defensive end, having Jerry Hughes on our list, I think the biggest addition he brings to the team is probably his veteran presence. Obviously, his stats been quite consistent over his career, but the fact he's been in the league for 10 years now, that's pretty. I think every team could benefit from having someone like Jerry Hughes in their team, just having that much experience. Also, Trent Murphy at the other defensive end, I think he's deserving being on this list, primarily just due to his consistency. Interesting to see if he can get back to that level he had in 2016 in DC, where he had 9 sacks and 47 combined tackles. But apart from that, these two defensive end players are pretty consistent.
I do like that point you made about the Bills having veteran presence on that defense. You know, they've got young studs in Tremaine Edmonds and Tre'Davious White, so I think, as you said, veteran leadership is very important.
It's good to have that balance.
Yeah, we've talked about leadership a lot in the past episodes, and it's definitely an important trait to have, I guess, to have that veteran presence, especially on the defensive line.
Yeah,
I think he's, as you guys mentioned, Hughes has been a very consistent performer over his career. In regards to Murphy, I think even though he, as you mentioned, Anthony, had 9 sacks a couple of seasons ago, I still think 2019 was Murphy's best season. I think it was a more well-rounded season statistically speaking, and he also performed very well in the wildcard game against the Texans, gathering 2 sacks. I know that McClendon is a nose tackle, and yes, he's not going to produce the same kind of numbers as Oliver will. I don't think he necessarily needs to. He closed the gaps he needed if we watch some of the Jets games. And however, I still think Oliver will have the more successful career in the NFL, and next year he'll be here for sure replacing McClendon.
Now on to our outside linebackers. We have Carl Van Noy, who signed with the Dolphins from the Patriots in the offseason, and AJ Klein, who signed in Buffalo from the Saints. Carl Van Noy was consistently productive during his time in New England, and especially during his final year with the team, when he registered 6.5 sacks, 15 QB hits, 7 tackles for loss, and 3 forced fumbles. And honestly, I can only see him doing good things in Miami with the Dolphins, who are in dire need of a defensive veteran presence.
Yeah, I think Carl Van Noy is such a great linebacker who's consistently able to pressure the quarterback and stop the run. You know, he's always there, and I think that he's very underrated. I don't think he gets talked about enough. That being said, his best football was played while he was on that incredible Patriots defense. So I'm very excited to see what he brings to the Dolphins. I do think that he's going to elevate that defense to another level. They won't be a top-tier defense, but I think his presence there makes them at least one that can compete with good offenses. I do think that he is a great player and very deserving of this spot as the best outside linebacker in this division.
I reckon interesting for me with Carl Van Noy. Obviously, before he moved to New England, he was got drafted to Detroit. Didn't have great stat line at all. Didn't perform very well. Moved to New England and played outstandingly. His stats improved. His overall play improved. And now since he's moved to Miami, I reckon it'd be interesting to see, especially being that older presence in a young defense. I'm interested to see how he performs there. If he drops off, if he continues to be at that elite level. I think that's just interesting for me to see how he goes in Miami.
For sure, I think Van Noy is a very underrated player at his position. The Dolphins, as we know, love picking up ex-Patriots players, especially this offseason. They picked up 2 former Patriots linebackers, including obviously Van Noy and Elandon Roberts. They also got a big fish addition in Byron Jones and drafted Noah Igbenogany. I think with that, they have a much stronger defense.
I agree. That's a good point, Rick, about the improving defense. As for Klein, he too has been the epitomization of consistency and good production while with New Orleans, and there's no doubt in my mind he'll be adding to an already elite Bills defense.
Yeah, he's such a solid player on this great Bills defense. He's put up a respectable amount of tackles in the last few years. He got 69 total last year, as well as 2.5 sacks and an interception. I think he's very well balanced and a very good asset to this defense.
On to our inside linebackers now. We have Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills and Dante Hightower from the Patriots. Tremaine Edmonds is one of the best young linebackers in this league. There's no doubt about it. In his 2 years in the league thus far, he hasn't gone under 115 combined tackles. As for Hightower, like Van Noy, he's been a stalwart of that championship Patriots defense. As an inside linebacker, he still managed 5.5 sacks, 13 QB hits, and 8 tackles for loss last season. Both of these linebackers are certainly deserving of these positions on our team.
Tremaine Edmonds is the best player on the Bills, in my opinion. He's only been in the league 2 years, and he's already made himself known as one of the best inside linebackers in the league. The craziest part about him is that he's only 22. So he's so young, and he's got such an incredibly bright future ahead. I have no doubt he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the league as a whole in just a few years. With Dante Hightower, he's a key asset to that incredibly strong Patriots defense. Such a well-rounded linebacker. He can pressure the quarterback, stop the run, and also make plays in coverage. He doesn't put up crazy numbers, but he is definitely an underappreciated player in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you what you said with Tremaine Edmonds being that best player on that Bills team, especially on the defense. I think you said, obviously, he's 22 years old, and his production in just 2 seasons in the league has been incredible, recording over 110 combined tackles in both seasons, which is pretty good considering he's so young.
Yeah, he's an absolute giant of an inside linebacker. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He had a great rookie season and backed it up in 2019 with a very consistent showing. In regards to Dante Hightower, at his age, I certainly thought maybe he'd be washing out of the league in 2019 after his fairly disappointing 2018 season, but I think he had the best season of his career in 2019. It will be wonderful to see him produce another season like that.
On to our secondary now, and we have Stephon Gilmore from the Patriots at cornerback 1 and Tre'Davious White from the Bills at cornerback 2. In my opinion, the AFC East has arguably one of the best, if not the best, cornerback duos in the league. After moving from the Bills a couple of seasons ago, Gilmore has blossomed into arguably the best cornerback in all of football, while White has certainly filled the void of Gilmore's absence in Buffalo.
Yeah, Gilmore and White, I think, are the 2 best cornerbacks in the league, in my opinion. They both recorded 6 interceptions, virtually shot their side of the field down. Gilmore only allowed a 44.1 quarterback rating while being targeted, and White a 45 quarterback rating. I think the only question mark here will be how long Gilmore can produce at this high level, considering he is 30 years old, whereas White is still only 25, entering the prime of his career.
Yeah, I think Stephon Gilmore and Tre'Davious White are definitely obvious choices at cornerback for me. There's no way you can look past, obviously, Stephon Gilmore getting that 2019 Defensive Player of the Year award. That's definitely just the main reason why he's here. And again, the stats you mentioned, Arif, just prove how good these 2 cornerbacks are. And they're the pillars to the defenses of their respective teams.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they said Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore, best cornerback in the league, in my opinion, with Tre'Davious White closely behind. I think it's no-brainer to have these 2 here. They both led the league in interceptions with 6. Without him, Stephon Gilmore and the Patriots defense would substantially decline. I mean, Gilmore is able to make any opposing receiver a non-factor in a game, and that is a huge ability that not many defenses have. With Tre'Davious White, he had multiple interceptions in each of his 3 seasons so far. He had a career high of 6 last year. And he's only 25, so as you said, if he's entering his prime, he's only going to get better. And he's already one of the best corners in the league. I'm very excited to see what the future holds for him.
On to our safeties now, and we have New England's Devin McCourty at free safety and New York Jets' Jamal Adams at strong safety. McCourty is just another reliable piece of that Bill Belichick defense in that deep secondary. As for Adams, he's the best strong safety in football, in my opinion, and he's only going to get better as he continues to develop, whether that be in New York or somewhere else, as he's obviously requested a trade. He's easily the best strong safety in his division.
Yeah, as I said with Adams, best strong safety in the league, I reckon. And I know that he's not going to be on this team for much longer, so luckily we got him on this list just in time. But I can guarantee that he'd be the strong safety in any division, no matter where he goes. He's the best in the league, and he's one of the best defensive players in the league as well. So no-brainer here. With Devin McCourty, from 2013 to 2018, he got 1 interception in each season. Last year he got 5, so that's his highest since 2012, where he also had 5. I think that he's proven that he's still got some gas left in the tank, and he's a good veteran presence on that great Patriots defense, as I said before. I don't think he'll decline much, considering the system that he's in right now in New England. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about him.
Yeah, for me, Jamal Adams is lethal, in my opinion. He's shown to be consistent over his 3 years in the league, and the second he came to the Jets, he had instant impact. Like, whenever I think of the Jets defense, I just think Jamal Adams. He's just such a good player, and I think the team that he does go to, he'll make that defense pretty scary. I'm just imagining him in Baltimore. Just for example, if you went there, could you imagine how that defense would benefit even more?
I agree.
Yeah, so I think definitely deserving of being... he's the best strong safety in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's a very big presence, and like you said, whichever team he goes to, he will definitely have the same insane production. Already the best strong safety in the league at 24 years of age. In regards to Devin McCourty, he's been one of the most durable players in the league. He's only missed 5 games in his entire 10-year career, and he's missed none in the last 4 seasons. Interesting to note that he's turning 33 next month, and he signed a 2-year, $23 million contract. So it's fair to say it probably is his final 2 seasons in the league. I hope he's as productive as he was in 2019.
On to our special teams now. At kicker we have Stephen Hauschka from the Bills. At punter we have Matt Hack from Miami. And our return specialist is Andre Roberts from Buffalo as well. On to our All-AFC North team, and at quarterback we obviously have Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens. Jackson has thrived in Baltimore's RPO-heavy and tight-end-heavy offense. His touchdown-to-interception ratio is elite, especially considering how young and inexperienced he is. He's definitely the choice here at quarterback, as Mayfield is nowhere near his level, Roethlisberger is aging and isn't the same player he was, and Joe Burrow is completely unproven at the NFL level.
Lamar Jackson is for sure deserving of being at this position. Obviously the MVP last season, and he proved like he's definitely deserving of getting that MVP award. His ability to scramble, as we all know, is just what makes him that little bit more elite than any other player in the league. Unfortunately, he still hasn't won a playoff game. I think it doesn't take away of anything from his skill, but I think he'll need to perform more consistently in the playoffs and get a playoff win, so he can move up from that elite level to more that legendary status.
I think that there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to win playoff games in the future. I mean, he's still so young.
Yeah.
His first full season as a starter, he made it to the divisional round, first seed in the AFC. And I think it's just inexperience in the playoffs that made him lose that game. He looked very nervous. Game was over pretty much from the time he threw the interception early on. That being said, I don't think he's going to have as good a season as he just did. I think that this was the best season of his career. That being said, he's still going to be an elite quarterback. He's still going to be one of the best players in the league for many years to come. I mean, he broke the record for rushing yards in a single season by a quarterback, and he led the league in touchdowns, had the highest QBR and the 3rd highest passer rating. I think he'll be fine, honestly.
I think it's a bit early. I think you were talking about legendary status, but he did have a very good season. He does have to work on, playoff performances and such, but he is very good.
What I mean is, if he continues at this level of performance and he doesn't have that, he doesn't make a deep run to playoffs in any stage of his career, I don't think we could ever say he's a legendary status.
You made a point about him being more elite than any other player in the league. Do you think he's the best player in the league?
Yeah, I think so. Just that ability to run, to scramble, leave that pocket when there's pressure and scramble, get that first down. I think no quarterback does that to the extent that he does it, and he's clearly the MVP, in my opinion.
But does that make him better than someone like Mahomes?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think that Lamar Jackson is too inexperienced at this point to be considered the best player in the league. I would say that Mahomes is best.
He's equally as he's been in the league for one more season than Lamar.
But Mahomes has achieved a lot more.
I think Lamar Jackson's the most exciting player to watch in the NFL at the moment. I think he's more exciting to watch than Mahomes. I don't necessarily think that means that he's the better player, especially with what Mahomes has achieved, especially with stuff like his playoff comebacks. That's a really good asset to have, honestly, in those tough moments. He really needs to maintain his composure in big moments. I'm talking about Jackson here, and he'll be remembered as one of the greatest mobile quarterbacks to ever play the game.
Exactly. That's a really good point you make, Arif. Mahomes does have that clutch gene, and it is something that Lamar hasn't yet developed yet. And I think once he does, I don't doubt that he will. I think once he does, he will then be able to be put in that conversation with Mahomes as the best player in the league. Because if we're being honest, Lamar has not achieved anything yet. I mean, he won his MVP, but so did Newton. But what has Newton achieved in his career, kind of thing? You know what I mean? We move on to our running backs now, and we have Nick Chubb from the Browns at RB1 and Joe Mixon from the Bengals at RB2. Obviously, we've got two very talented backs here in the AFC North in Chubb and Mixon. Chubb impressed right from the get-go and improved even more in his sophomore season. As for Mixon, he's an extremely underrated running back in this league, and I feel that his impressive production has been lost in the fact that the Bengals have been one of the worst teams in the league recently. Hopefully, however, he can continue to prove the non-believers wrong in 2020.
I think it's pretty amazing to see Nick Chubb go 1,000 yards in his rookie season and then back it up with 1,500 yards in 2019. I think, obviously he's a great player, but I think after going through that rookie season, getting 1,000 yards, there's a lot of opportunity for the critics to say, oh, he might be a bust, just a one year wonder. I think him being able to back it up proves how good he is and how valuable he will be in the future for the Browns.
I do want to mention, sorry, Anthony, he was 4 yards shy of 1,000 yards in his rookie season. So, I mean, he's very almost there. Wasn't quite there, but, I mean, it's still an incredibly impressive feat.
It's thereabouts. We'll give it to him. I mean, technically no, but
yeah,
technically yes.
I mean, I give him credit for it. He did month out. Yeah. Anyway, I was going to make a point about Joe Mixon. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league, in my opinion. If it wasn't for that poor Cincinnati offense, I think his performances would draw more attention across the league. Because the reality is he's recorded over 1,100 yards in the past 2 seasons and should be considered as one of the top running backs in the NFL. I think with a solid offensive line and more balanced offense, he could really explode even more than he already has.
I mean, it's incredible what he's been able to do behind that terrible Cincinnati offensive line. I mean, he's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. In 2018, I believe he was in the top 5 rushing leaders. So I think that he's not talked about enough. I think a big part of that is because he's on the Bengals. They're a team that's not really talked about. He had a fairly average rookie season, but he's really stepped up in the past 2 years. I really hope the Bengals can get their offensive line together so that Mixon can take his game to another level. With Nick Chubb, he's been incredible, as you said, Jack, since he was drafted in 2018. He had 1,494 rushing yards last season, second most in the league behind Derrick Henry, of course. And he averaged 5 yards per carry in both of his seasons. And at the age of 24, he's going to be one of the best running backs in the league for a long time.
Yeah, Chubb was a great value pickup in the second round of the draft in 2018. He's kept talents like Kareem Hunt off the field. He has a really wide skill set. He's got a great mix of strength, power, speed, and agility for a guy that is 227 pounds. No surprise he's forced the most missed tackles since he entered the league. In regards to Mixon, there's probably a few talented backs such as Mark Ingram, James Conner, but Mixon gets the nods here due to his productivity with a subpar offensive line. The Bengals have the worst offensive line by far in this division, as we'll probably talk about when we get to the offensive line. Yet, similar to Chris Carson, he's able to put up great numbers. So I think he is primed for a good 2020 season.
On to our wide receivers, we have OBJ from the Browns at wide receiver 1, AJ Green from the Bengals at wide receiver 2, and at WR3 we have Juju Smith-Schuster from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And obviously we've got 3 really elite wide receivers here in the AFC North. They're pretty easy choices in my opinion, but there are definitely other guys in this division who are knocking on the door. You know, you've got guys like Tyler Boyd, Jarvis Landry, and Marquise Brown, who are all very impressive receivers who, in my opinion, would have found themselves to be in the top 3 receivers in other divisions.
I agree with your point there. I don't think Marquise Brown would quite be there yet for other divisions, but I do agree with Tyler Boyd and Jarvis Landry, for sure. That being said, Odell Beckham Jr. at number 1. Setting aside 2017 where he was injured early, he's never had a season with less than 1,000 receiving yards, and he hasn't really had great quarterbacks thrown to him. You know, he's had an old Eli Manning thrown to him, and now he's got a Baker who's not quite ready to be one of the best in the league. He's in his prime now, and I do believe that the Browns will improve over their disappointing 2019 campaign.
Yeah. For me, OBJ is one of the most exciting players in the league. He's consistently been, he's had a lot of fame and hype around his career after the 2015, 2016, patch he had with Eli Manning throwing to him when they were elite team, the Giants. Since then, he's had a lot of hype since he moved to the Browns. Was arguably one of the bigger trades in the last couple of years. But additionally to his fame, he actually has the stats to back it up. He's had, as you mentioned, over 1,000 yards in each of his season, except for 2017 was injured. And like I mentioned before about having Eli Manning back in that 2015 period when they were elite, if Baker Mayfield and the Browns can all click together, there's no reason why OBJ can't get back to that stat line he had in 2015 when he had 1,400 yards, could even exceed that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, Odell's best season probably has come with the Giants, but still managed to put up 1,000 yards last season, and he'll definitely only improve. In regards to AJ Green, the Bengals did draft T. Higgins in this year's draft and have John Ross emerging as a deep threat, and obviously Tyler Boyd, who's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. So if Green does come back, I think he'll just play out his franchise tag, maybe look to go somewhere else. Juju, I don't think Juju is one of those players who can succeed with average to poor quarterback play. We've talked earlier in the episode about Devontae Parker, and I think Juju should resume his productivity level that he had in 2018 when he had 111 receptions.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned Juju not being able to play with, average to poor quarterback play. A lot of people wrote him off last season. They're saying, he can't play as a number one receiver. He's a number two receiver. That's all he's good for. I disagree with that. I think that, obviously he had those amazing seasons while he had Antonio Brown on the other side of the field. But last season, you can't ignore the fact that the Steelers' offense was terrible because of the quarterback play. I mean, when you have Mason Rudolph and Hodges playing quarterback, you're not going to be a good offense no matter what. So I do think that if Roethlisberger can get back to his normal self, I don't see why Juju can't succeed as a number one receiver.
I think if you look at Juju going to the future, I think he'll need to. He's still relatively young. I think he'll need to adjust to having to play under poor quarterback performance if he used to have a consistent stat line over his career. Because you mentioned last season he didn't really have that good stats playing, under poor quarterback performance in Pittsburgh. With that being said, I think getting Big Ben back will be definitely an addition that will boost his confidence going into the 2020 season. Also, for AJ Green, I think similar to Mixon, he's obviously been injured quite a while now. He's been out and hasn't had a full season since 2018. But I think similar to Joe Mixon, he's one of the more underrated players in the league. Definitely one of the better players in Cincinnati. I think with Joe Burrow coming in, and if AJ Green could get back to that level he had in 2018, this could be one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in the division. It could be very exciting to watch.
As much as that might be the case, Anthony, I agree with Riv's point that I don't believe Green will be in Cincinnati for much longer, especially for the guys coming through in that wide receiver room for them. On to our tight end, we have Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens. Andrews has flourished for the Ravens in their aforementioned tight end heavy offense. He's built good chemistry with Lamar Jackson, and I believe he'll continue to be very productive for years to come.
I think that if Eric Ebron was able to replicate his 2018 campaign last season with the Colts, I think I would say, in my opinion, he's the best tight end in this division. Now that he's on the Steelers, I'm excited to see what he can do. But he did have a disappointing 2019 season with Jacoby Brissett thrown to him, whereas Mark Andrews was incredible. He had the second highest amount of receiving touchdowns in the league along with Cooper Kupp. They both had 10 receiving touchdowns, and he's only 23, so the future is bright for this man.
It's a good point about Ebron there, because the issue with him is consistency. He was inconsistent at Detroit, and then he really broke out in Indianapolis, and then he went back, down for a season there. But yeah, I feel you're right. If he could get back to that form, I feel like his peak is better than someone like Andrews' peak. Yeah. But it's just a matter of if he can get back to that level.
I reckon he can get back to that level. He has the potential to be the clear-cut starter in Pittsburgh. The Colts already had Jack Doyle there, and Ebron only managed to start 2 games last season, playing in only 11. I feel like with Vance McDonald aging, Ebron will take over that spot, especially since he is still only 27 years old, and could give Mark Andrews a run for his money next year for the best tight end in the division.
Do you think that Eric Ebron's lack of production last season was the fact that he didn't start many games, or do you think it's the fact that he didn't have Andrew Luck thrown to him, instead he had a fairly poor performance in...
That's actually a good point,
set?
because he didn't start all of the games in 2018 when he had Luck throwing to him. Still managed to gather 13 touchdowns. I think you're right in the sense that Luck did look to him a lot in the red zone. It will be interesting to see if Roethlisberger will do the same.
Yeah, obviously Mark Andrews recorded 852 yards in 2019. Obviously he's a brilliant asset to the Ravens, only at 23 years old of age. Sorry, only being 23 years old. I really hope he can back up this season with a good performance in 2020. Obviously, there's a lot of factors surrounding why Eric Ebron didn't get back to that 2018 level of performance. I hope Mark Andrews can be consistent over the next few years in Baltimore.
Honestly, I think Mark Andrews has the potential to be the AFC version of George Kittle. I think he's got a well-rounded set of abilities in the sense that he has speed, he's good at run and pass blocking. To produce what he did in a run-first offense is very impressive, and I still wouldn't be surprised to see him break 1,000 yards next season.
Finishing off our offense now with the offensive line, we have Ronnie Stanley from the Ravens at tackle, Joel Bitonio from the Browns at guard, Marquise Pouncey from the Steelers at centre, David DeCastro from the Steelers at guard, and finishing off at tackle with Orlando Brown Jr., who is, of course, from the Ravens.
As Arif mentioned before, the Bengals don't have a strong offensive line, and it shows here, each other team in this division has at least one player here. Bengals have none, and that's their biggest issue going into the season, I reckon.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that the Ravens and the Steelers have a lot of representation here with 2 players each. They definitely do have the strongest O-lines in this division.
Now onto our defense, and defensive end we have Myles Garrett from the Browns. At defensive tackle we have Geno Atkins from the Bengals, and at defensive end we have Carlos Dunlap from the Bengals as well. The fact that we have 2 Bengals players here amongst our AFC North defensive line in Atkins and Dunlap is a testament to just how underrated yet productive they've been, despite being surrounded by ineptitude on that Cincinnati defense. On the other hand, Garrett has been outstanding for the Browns since entering the league, and it will only continue to improve in my opinion. I think he'll eventually challenge for a Defensive Player of the Year award during his prime years.
I agree with that statement. It's such a shame that last year he got suspended halfway through the season, because he did have 10 sacks and 18 QB hits. He was on track to have the best season of his career so far. I'm sure he'll be back this season and be just as good, if not better. As you said, Jack, Defensive Player of the Award.
Yeah.
Defensive Player of the Year award in the future is very much a possibility. With Atkins and Dunlap, I think, as you said, Jack, it's a very good testament to how strong that Bengals defensive line can be and is. It's a shame that the rest of their defense isn't as good.
Yeah, for me, Myles Garrett obviously missed half the season due to suspension. Still recorded 10 sacks up to the point he got suspended, which is still very good, I think. If he'd continued to play the rest of that season out, it could be astonishing what he could have achieved. He had that level of consistency throughout. Also, as you mentioned, Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, both great additions to the Bengals team. They're very consistent, just good players to have on the team.
Yeah, I agree with your points about Garrett. Atkins, now that he's 31 years old, he's not the defensive force that he used to be. He took a step back in 2019, but he's still a very productive player. Dunlap showed that he still has it, even though he's also aging. He was harassing opposing quarterbacks with 9 sacks and 21 quarterback hits.
On to our outside linebackers now, and we have TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, both from the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's really just a testament to how good Pittsburgh's defense has become, as they've, they're kind of dominating this defensive portion of our and AFC North team.
Yeah, Watt had insane production. He had 40.5 sacks, 36 quarterback hits, and an insane 8 forced fumbles. Paired with Bud Dupree, they probably are in the top 3 in outside linebacker duos in the league. Dupree often gets lost behind the shadow of the younger TJ Watt, but he's still very productive himself.
TJ Watt last year, he was unstoppable. I mean, not only did he have a career-high 14.5 sacks, but he also led the league in forced fumbles with Chandler Jones, and he had 2 interceptions to boost. I would not be surprised, like with Myles Garrett, to see Watt win Defensive Player of the Year in the near future. With Bud Dupree, I agree with your point, Arif. You said that he's often overlooked because he's playing alongside TJ Watt. He did have somewhat of a breakout season last year, recording double-digit sacks for the first time in his career, as well as having a career-high 68 tackles and 17 QB hits.
Yeah, it's really nice to see TJ Watt play consistent football. Obviously, came into the league in 2017, and since then, the last 2 seasons, 2018-2019, recorded 13 and 14.5 sacks respectively. With Bud Dupree recording 11.5 sacks in 2019, just shows how good and how well balanced both players are in that Pittsburgh defense.
Now to our inside linebackers, which is again dominated by Pittsburgh. We have Devin Bush and Vince Williams. Bush has been really, really quite impressive since he entered the league, and he's already in this list even after just his rookie season. And obviously the more experienced Williams is also there. And yeah, again, it's a testament to how good Pittsburgh's defense is and will continue to get.
Devin Bush is an excellent linebacker. I mean, he had over 100 tackles in his first season, and he forced 3 turnovers. I think it just shows how strong this Steelers defense is. I mean, they're so young, and they have so much talent, and I can't wait to see how much more these players develop in the future. With Vince Williams, he's not jaw-dropping, but he's been a solid asset for the Steelers, especially the last 3 years. Didn't produce as much last year, but that's mainly because he only started 18 games and was overshadowed by the rookie Devin Bush.
The Steelers have the 2 best inside linebackers in this division. They found a gem in Devin Bush at pick 10, and he'll only improve on his impressive rookie season. He's definitely a turnover machine, and Williams isn't the producer that he used to be at 30 years old, but he still had a serviceable 2019 season.
Yeah, I've mentioned before, having that veteran presence in any defense is just really beneficial, especially having a rookie in Devin Bush. Obviously, yeah, he produced pretty well in his rookie season, 109 combined tackles. So yeah, I think having a veteran presence balanced with that rookie presence that will only get better as he goes on in his career definitely shows why Pittsburgh has these 2 players on our list at these positions.
Onto our secondary, and we have at cornerback 1 Marcus Peters, who is now at Baltimore, and at cornerback 2 Joe Hayden from the Steelers. Peters has been reborn really since being traded to the Ravens from the Rams. He's arguably deserving of this CB1 spot on our list. Hayden is a very decent starter in Pittsburgh, but I strongly believe Marlon Humphrey should possess the CB2 mantle instead of him. Humphrey had 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 2 defensive touchdowns, 65 combined tackles, and 4 tackles for loss, which were all career highs last season.
Yeah, Marcus Peters, he was incredible in Kansas City, at the early stage of his career, and it was very disappointing to see him play so, not poorly, but he was playing at a much lower standard than we were accustomed to on the Rams.
Yeah.
However, he really did bounce back when he went to Baltimore. He established himself as one of the best players on the team, almost instantaneously there. Joe Hayden, while he did have an incredible season last year, I do agree with Jack. I think Marlon Humphrey should be here on this list. I think that overall he's a better player right now. He's younger and he's got a lot more exciting football left to play.
For me, it's really good to see Joe Hayden come to a more consistent level later on in his career. Obviously, he hasn't had that same level of production, level of consistency in the 10 years he's been in the NFL. But since he's made that switch to Pittsburgh, he's improved quite substantially, which is good to see. Obviously, Marcus Peters, when he started his career in Kansas City, he was one of the better cornerbacks in the league, recording 8 interceptions in his first season. Since then, he dropped off in LA, but again, picked up that level of production since he moved to the Ravens midway through last year. So I reckon he'll continue to do good things in such a great defense in Baltimore.
Peters had 3 pick sixes in 2019. Reminds me of Eddie Jackson a season or 2 ago. He really shone when he went from LA to Baltimore. In regards to Hayden, I think this is the last season that he'll be this productive. He had 5 interceptions, 17 passes defense, and there's no doubt in my mind that Marlon Humphrey will be occupying this spot next season.
Onto our safeties now, and a free safety of Minka Fitzpatrick from the Steelers and Von Bell from Cincinnati. Fitzpatrick has really been such a boost for this Steelers defense, which is quickly becoming elite. Obviously, since he was traded from Miami, Von Bell has been, he's not like a flashy player by any means, but he's consistent and reliable in that Bengals secondary.
Yeah, Minka Fitzpatrick, as soon as he was traded to the Steelers, he turned into a different player. I mean, he had 5 interceptions with his new team, one of them being a 96-yard pick six. I'm pretty sure everyone saw that. As I said before, this Steelers defense does have a lot of young talent, and Fitzpatrick is one of those players. Can't wait to see what he does this season. I do want to mention Earl Thomas, who would be on this list if Fitzpatrick didn't have such an incredible year last season. With Von Bell, I think there's a debate to be made here between him and Terrell Edmonds, but Bell has the edge here simply because he's been in the league a little longer and he had a more impressive 2019 campaign.
Absolutely incredible season from Minka Fitzpatrick once he moved to the Steelers. I believe he needs to improve on his tackling, but he's developing into one of the best free safeties in the league. In regards to Von Bell, we've been already mentioning turnover machines such as Marcus Peters. The AFC North defense has quite a few, but no one racked up more fumble recoveries than Von Bell. He had 5 last season, 6 if you include the playoffs, and now he's joining a Bengals defense who made quite a few positive changes this offseason.
I think for me, obviously when Minka Fitzpatrick moved from the Dolphins to the Steelers, he really picked up that production. I think for me, one of the best turnarounds that anyone had in the season. It went from pretty much, zero production to crazy production in the Pittsburgh secondary. Also, Von Bell is entering his fifth season in the league. Spent the first 4 seasons in New Orleans. As you mentioned, Jack, very durable player, consistent, has had combined tackles in the mid to high 80s his whole career. So there's no reason I reckon he can continue that level of production in Cincinnati.
I mean, your point there about Terrell Edmonds, I do like Edmonds. He is still a bit inexperienced, to be honest. I think he's got some work to do to overtake Bell, but he definitely, I can see him being, on this list in the future. Finally, we move to our special teams where we have arguably the best kicker in the league in Justin Tucker from Baltimore. The punter is Jordan Berry from Pittsburgh, and our return specialist is Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh. Boys, that wraps up our all AFC North and all AFC East division teams. If you haven't already, follow us on Instagram where we post all our content. It is at touch.down.under. We are also on Twitter. We post consistent updates. That is at the TDU podcast. We are also on YouTube at TouchDownUnder, and we premiere our podcasts on Facebook as well at TouchDownUnder. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. Thanks.